Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I thought we'd sit down with a cup of tea or beverage of your choice and take a look at some of my sketchbook pages from over the years. When I was originally thinking about this video idea at the end of last year, I was just going to show you what I had worked on throughout that year. However, it has actually been 3.5 years since my last sketchbook tour, so how about we go back a little bit further? Before we jump in, I want to let you know that I have linked everything I possibly could from this video in the description, whether that's other artists I mention or supplies that I've used. Be sure to check the description if you have any of those types of questions. The first pages I have to show you are indeed sketchbook pages. However, they were in a sketchbook that I did not enjoy working in, and I never got around to finishing the whole book. A few months ago, I ended up dismantling the sketchbook, keeping the pages that I liked and using the rest as scrap paper. So this first painting goes all the way back to the end of 2018. It's the only one from that year. It was a hippo I painted as a tutorial on Patreon using Neela Kalori watercolors. I used a flat brush for most of the first layer and then finished it off with a round brush for details. The following pages are ones I have very strong memories tied to. They were not only part of probably the only art challenge I've ever completely finished, but they were also painted while I was visiting my best friend at the beginning of 2019 before my cross-country move. These studies were done for the 100 Animal Eyes challenge, which I tried to finish in 10 days, but I think I ended up needing an extra couple days at the end. I'm so happy I finished, and they make me really happy to look back on. I do remember wishing throughout this challenge that I had done less mammals and more of the animals in other groups, as others were so often bright, colorful, and varied. As we move in to an actual proper sketchbook, I wanted to let you know that I won't be sharing every single page of all of the books we're looking at today. Since there are 3 total, we'd be A, here for a very long time, and B, some of the pages might just have some personal information on them, or I may not have anything interesting to say. I started off this travelogue sketchbook in August of 2019 with a pair of class projects, which is actually a video here on YouTube. The monochrome piece was from a class by Jenny Granberry, while the colorful portraits were from Arlisha Yetzer's Skillshare class. They were both great exercises for beginners in portraiture like myself. The next spread actually made me chuckle a bit as I looked through these pages for the first time in quite a while. They were some of my first studies using Indian Throne Blue and Indian Red. If you caught some of my other recent videos, this might sound familiar because they're the pigments in Stormy Blue, a new tube color that I developed with DaVinci Paint Go for my Embrace Opacity palette. In any case, rhinos are among my favorite animals to paint, and these sketches are finished off with some brush pen line work. Skipping forward to November of 2019, I started a Huevember challenge that, you guessed it, I never ended up finishing. The idea was to use 1 pigment per sketch, and I personally wanted to study animal skulls during this challenge. I genuinely had a blast with these, and I always wanted to come back to it. I don't thrive well on daily challenges, but I would like to finish the remaining 21 colors and skulls when I get a chance. And that is going to pretty much be it for this sketchbook. I did revisit it once in August of 2022 to try out some of the Da Vinci gouache for a Patreon live stream, but I quickly abandoned it again. This sketchbook was an early favorite of mine, but in hindsight, I can definitely see that I was struggling with the paper. I'm still keeping it around in case I want to finish the Huevember challenge in it, but I could also see myself dismantling it like the last one, so we shall see. Moving chronologically, we are headed into 2020, but obviously this is the year of the big panini, and I am not exactly productive when I am stressed or depressed. I didn't paint much as it was, and when I was painting this year, I was often in a handmade sketchbook that I was using for handmade watercolors. I'd like to save that sketchbook for when it's full, so we're going to skip it for now and skip to the end of that year. In November of 2020, I took another class with Jenny Granberry for portrait practice, and these were my studies. Jenny's classes are currently sold out because she is super awesome, but if you're interested in a future class, check out her website, which of course is in the description. Kicking off the new year in 2021, my third class with Jenny was on keeping an art journal. This became a really important outlet for me in the thralls of pandemic depression, and I am so grateful to have been in that class. Opening this little bitty Hahnemuhle sketchbook, I did a simple title page as well as swatched out the palette that I had put together specifically to use in this book. Cricket, of course, made her own contribution by swiping the wet paint swatches with her tail. The class started off with some simple demo exercises and mark making to get comfortable with our supplies, and believe it or not, I think this is the first time I ever experimented with Posca markers. I am not one for abstract painting, so the next set of exercises did not come naturally, and I'm really glad that Jenny was there for encouragement. She started us off with 4 prompts, one by one, and these little rectangles will be something that you see again in later pages. The idea, of course, was to draw what the word felt like to me in that moment. The next page has some tasteful artistic nudity, but if you don't want to see that, please avert your eyes. This was a big deal for me on a lot of levels. The final exercise in Jenny's class was to take some inspiration from a tarot card, in this case, the star. We were to reflect on how it resonated for us and interpret it into a journal spread. I usually paint realistic wildlife, so this was really great for my exploration of creativity, which I previously didn't do a lot of. On a larger scale, this exercise got me into reading tarot cards in general as a form of self-reflection and self-care. So on many levels, thank you so much to Jenny, because it's been amazing. We'll see more tarot spreads later, but for now, let's get back to some animals. After that last page in the class, we were on our own, so I continued to explore creating full page journal spreads, as well as using the paint markers in addition to watercolor. Each page of this spread was painted on back-to-back days with similar animals on each page. On the next page, I used the same type of supplies, but for some good old fun, I just made a crossover between some of my favorite tea mugs and D&D. Here is where we get into some more personal things that I'm not comfortable sharing, so I'm going to skip ahead a bit, and we're going to look at some more of those emotional studies, followed by one of my favorite things that I did with the paint markers. I had done this sketch of a Cooper's hawk that I saw in Austin, but the left side of the page felt really empty once the bird was painted. Taking in some of Jenny's tips on how to fill a page, I added some stylized feathers, and it was a lot of fun. Next, I was trying to study on Mara Wynn's gorgeous style, but the woman is amazing and she definitely does it better. The page next to that is a painting of a nightmare, which is basically a fiendish horse made of fire and brimstone. This was a few months after we had started the 2 Curse of Strahd D&D campaigns that I still run now. more than 2 years later, and we're nearing the end of both campaigns, and I am very grateful to all of my players who have stuck it out with me to see the story through. It's been absolutely wonderful. The next page is some more nude female figure studies if you're not interested in seeing those. On this spread, to make it more cohesive, I used a different color for each of the sketches and then paired them with some Posca marker doodles. I think my favorite one is the one in cerulean. This is a simple little page with a very wet wash left to dry on its own, causing lots of blooms. Then I painted some simple forms over the top. I really like this little guy in particular. We're going to skip most of the personal things here again, but I will share this spread with you. It's one of my favorites in terms of how I was feeling at the time. It's also one of the simplest and quickest that I painted in the entire journal, but it conveys a lot of emotion. Next, I have a couple more tarot spreads. I believe on this day I had drawn the Queen of Cups in the reversed position, or upside down for those of you who aren't familiar with tarot. Right side up, this card has so much beautiful emotion and meaning to it, so I remember wanting to create this spread where the mermaid that was in the water was trying to help replenish the other mermaid's cup. I don't know, but I just really like how it turned out. This one is a bit less meaningful, but still fun. It represents 4 cards instead of 1, and it was a very cups-centric read with a touch of pentacles. I was using 2 different decks, hence the different styles on each page. This spread is so dang special to me. On a day in February, actually just before the horrible winter storm we had that year, I went to the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in Austin and saw the migrating cedar waxwings. This is a species I had always seen in animal reference books and loved, but I had never seen them in person before. There were dozens, and they were so much smaller than I had pictured them in my head. I snapped some reference pictures since they were flying around so quickly and studied them for a bit before going home to paint them. The background is watercolor, the birds and aloe are in gouache, and the words are in Posca marker. That page sent me down a little gouache road trip where I turned to YouTube to help me out with some studies. I loved this spread from a video that Mary Sanch has on underpaintings. Highly recommend it. The complimentary one at the end makes my heart so happy, and I really need to do more of these because they were so much fun. And finally in this sketchbook, I have this adorable little llama friend, which was one of the last pieces I did before the big storm that I mentioned hit. That storm sent me into another artless depression spiral for a couple of months, so it was a while before my next sketchbook got started, and this one is an Etchr sketchbook, the one with the white covers, though I have painted this one purple, obviously. The first page I'm going to share in this sketchbook was from the end of April, where I challenged myself to paint chickens using no more than 15 brush strokes. You saw me experiment with this a little bit in my Etchr review, which is also later on in this sketchbook. One of my longtime patrons has wanted a civet or genet tutorial, but good references for those species are really hard to find. I still haven't been able to do one over there with a copyright-free image, but I did do a little bit of a practice in my sketchbook using some of the Schmincke super granulating paints. The next page, well, if you know, you know, and if you don't, You don't need to. It is a space sheep for all intents and purposes, and we'll just leave it at that. This one on the left is some opaque medium, likely gouache, but I honestly don't remember much about this one. But then we also have the Etchr chickens that I mentioned before. I think the Payne's Gray one is my favorite. I remember feeling pretty stuck sometime in here, so I was using a random animal generator just to do some quick sketches. And then I decided to try and recreate those pretty feathers from the hawk sketch that I showed you earlier, but they don't look as good. However, I did really like how the barn owl came out. In July of that year, I was preparing my How to Paint White Animals in a Watercolor class for Skillshare, so here I have some extra practice pieces. Here's another fun tarot spread. My favorite deck is called Orion's Animal Tarot by artist Ambi Sun. It's a stunningly gorgeous deck and has my favorite interpretations in the book that it comes with. The first 3 animals on this spread are based on their corresponding cards in the deck, and the last one has a cat playing with yarn on the card, but I replaced their cat with a little one of cricket. One more time jump to I don't know when to show you this cute little ferret and a soft background, but that's pretty much where this sketchbook ends. There are more pages, but I was desperately trying to get out of this sketchbook to move on to an Etchr Perfect sketchbook, so I abandoned the last couple pages. Now, the next sketchbook that I started, it is not my fault that I didn't finish it. The binding broke, and I had to cut out the paintings that I wanted to keep while keeping the rest of the paper for scraps. And then sadly, I had to just move on. Despite the binding breaking, I have used multiple of these sketchbooks, and the gray cover Etchr Perfect sketchbook has been a dream to work on compared to the other sketchbooks that I've used in the past. This was the first painting in that book, which I sketched during Thanksgiving weekend and remember very well. It's a Miscellaneous vulture painted entirely with Shadow Violet from Roman Schmal. I love this color. It was the first major holiday since the winter storm earlier that year, and the prior year I couldn't travel home to see my family in California. I was definitely feeling very alone, but my best friends in Austin took me in so that I could spend the holidays with them and a couple of their family members. It was one of the best holidays I have ever had, regardless of circumstance, and I am so grateful to have this little token from that weekend. I did paint a lot more in 2021, but many of them were actually in other sketchbooks that I ended up selling in my shop, so I don't have them here to show you. But I do promise that I was a little more productive than you're seeing now. If I haven't mentioned her enough during this video, Jenny also gifted me some So Flat acrylics from Golden. I was trying them out on this jellyfish during a Patreon live stream. 2022 brought the exciting promise and imminent stress of another cross-country move, so unfortunately there wasn't a lot of time in the first half of the year set aside for sketchbooking. When I landed in Oregon in the spring, I took a break from apartment hunting for a little bit and followed a video that Jenny was doing with Etchr Studio to paint this skull. It's quite different than my usual style, and I definitely picked up a tip or two. In the summer of 2020, I was settling into the new apartment and beginning to put together my Embrace Opacity palette. This was the early sketchbook spread from the first iteration of that palette, which only included 9 colors. I ended up scrapping one of the colors, and we ended up expanding to a full 12-color set that you saw at launch. The last full painting that I have to show you today is a coyote that I painted for another Patreon tutorial. This painting and the prior 2 pages were from the brown cover limited edition Etchr Perfect sketchbook, the ones that came out before the gray cover. It's very confusing. The majority of that sketchbook ended up being D&D stuff, so I cut these guys out to keep elsewhere, hence the loose pages. And that'll kind of bring us up to date. I started a new sketchbook in July of 2022, and I have been absolutely loving it. It's not a journal like the ones from 2021, and it's not a messy exploratory sketchbook like my earlier sketchbooks. I really wanted to have a sketchbook that was exploratory but also intentional. It's one that I don't use for random swatches or half-cooked ideas, but I also don't expect them or myself to be perfect and polished. It brings me so much happiness to be able to flip through this sketchbook of animal paintings plucked from various moments or places that remind me what was happening at the time. I am really looking forward to sharing this one with you when it's all done, but I do have a little ways to go. If you're still here, thank you for sticking around. The last couple of years have been difficult in a way that none of us could have predicted 3 years ago. How have your sketchbooks or art practice habits changed or morphed over time? And if you've miraculously managed to keep pace with your previous habits, what has helped you to do so? I would also love to hear if you had a favorite painting from this hodgepodge sketchbook tour spending the last several years, and also let me know if you're excited to see the next one. Thank you to all of you for watching, to my patrons for their incredible support, and obviously we need to send some big thanks to Jenny Granberry, because without her friendship and encouragement, I clearly would have accomplished nothing in these past couple years. Until next time, my friends, find some time for yourself and your sketchbook, and happy painting.